So my name is Isaac. I teach in the Department of Literature. I am a doctoral candidate. I think I studied with Betty, the PRO for this college. She's my classmate here. We both studied English and Literature. I think we're the three people in the humanities here with Dr. Nakazu. I work within what we call folklore literatures, and especially performance studies and post-colonial studies. And I also do, most of my work is being doing what we call folklore studies. So I deal a lot with narratives or self-narratives of personality and especially identities of Uganda. That's basically what I'm working with for my doctoral studies, but also something I'm so much interested in regarding whatever it is I want to think about. Now, my presentation is entitled Automated Humans and the Ethical Challenge. Something is missing here. It's human tech, automated humans, and the ethical challenge. As far as I remember, that's what it was. And I want to look at this from a purely humanities approach. I want to say this, I'm purely a humanities person, and we are the people that are most at stake in this country. We have been told many times we don't need to exist. So one of the things we're doing in this world of interdisciplinarity is that we're trying our level best to make sense of everything that comes around in our world and so many other things that we probably struggle with. And so, about this paper, I'm going to think about an introduction, what artificial intelligence is, and especially the issue of automation of humans. We look at technology and humanity, and we want to think about whether it's a binary relationship or it is a relationship that is meant to enhance us as human beings. And then I want to think about ethics and the reconstruction of the human being. Then what next in the ethical challenge, and how do we especially deal with what we are calling the fourth industrial revolution. Some of the examples I'm going to get are from something, I don't know if some of you have watched this or read the book. There's a book entitled The Handmaid's Tale. It's a beautiful novel by Margaret Atwood. And I'm going to work with that in thinking especially about automated humans. And then I'm going to see how we also as human beings think about ourselves, but also the machines that we create, and many other things that we want to think about. Now, let's start. I think sometime last year, I walked into Barclays Bank and was supposed to deposit some money. And this lady at the counter told me, it is too late, so you cannot deposit your money. And I said to her, okay, so what do I do? She said, well, I can find your way of depositing your money, because if you deposit it in here, you're going to have a fine on your account. I said, okay. And so she takes me to the ATM, and she takes me through a process of depositing money without an ATM card. And I thought to myself, this is beautiful. But as I thought through it after some time, I started asking myself this one question. Does this woman or this lady know that if she's not careful, she may not have a job soon? You see that? And I've done, because I have a Barclays account, I always deposit my money at the ATM. I have an account with Bank of Africa where I use my phone to get the money. And all this is very interesting technology. To think about how a machine will ask you questions and you're simply going to fit in stuff, and you want to think about this stuff and so many other things. The other experience that inspired this paper was the very first time I read Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. And of course, I've seen it serialized on television. And one of the interesting things about it, because while it seems to talk about the future, and especially talk about people and objects in the future, it also seems to ask us a few questions about how we view ourselves as humans, and especially where systems have been created that automate us to act in a specific way, so that as human beings we lose the human self and become machines without sometimes even knowing. And so there is this woman in the book entitled, called Offred. Of course, that's not her real name. And what is about her is that she is kidnapped from wherever she comes from, and she has to become a wife or a handmaid to a boss in Gilead. And what happens in Gilead is that too much technology has messed up this people that the women can no longer get children. And because they cannot get children anymore, women have to be gotten from outside Gilead to help the men be able to get children. And of course that brings in a lot of ethical questions and so many things that happen. But what happens in the text is that the women, especially who are handmaids, can no longer think for themselves. There is a system that conditions them to think in a certain way. Now, what happens with that, of course, is that they lose the sense of humanity, they lose the sense of self, they lose their identity. And in the long run, they start contesting and protesting about the very experiences that they're going through. And I'm going to refer to this as I talk about the automation of humans and think a lot more about how we, and as human beings, but also as machines that would make human beings, may probably make us rethink our own nature as human beings, but also maybe ask a few more questions about where we want to see ourselves in the future. Now, we know that AI is a simulation of intelligent human behavior in computers. When, you know, like the experience I gave you, going to an ATM and being asked questions that you never expected you would be asked. Or, you know, many years ago, I would go to the ATM and slot my card in and get my money. Now, I can go to the ATM, I don't need a card, and I can get money, I can deposit money. And this, for me, brings a lot of things to think about. That yes, we are creating computers to perform tasks that were originally performed by humans, who incidentally are perceived to be intelligent. In essence, are we creating a more intelligent self? That is something we want to think about this morning. And we want to think about voice recognition, visual perception, decision making, translation between languages. I know we all probably know about Google. My brother Mark calls him Mr. Google Sir. In gender studies, you call Google Mr. Google Sir, you're finished. Because they'll ask you, so what makes Google man? And of course, man is a very problematic thing in literary and gender studies. So some of us are careful how we use these words. But we are asking ourselves a question: are we at risk that maybe at some point our position and presence in the world would actually be threatened? You see, this means a lot for us as humans. This means that probably there is a continuous attempt to understand how as human beings, we're being put at the edge of technology. But our desire to understand ourselves and the networks we create, because human beings generally want to relate with one another. Dr. Benny has done, I know her work, she doesn't know that I know it. She's done something about backcloth making in Uganda. And when I read about backcloth making, I know it's a technology in Uganda. But I also know it's a technology that helps to advance the nature of the Baganda. It's part of their identity. And the question then comes up, when we create machines that are able to make us, or rather make us realize not just our intelligence, but also the intelligence of the machines, where is our identity as human beings? That's a question we want to think about a little more. That as we understand the networks that create, even in this whole group of engineers, except myself and two other people in this room, how are we able to make sure that even these networks maintain our personal touch and our human touch? And that is something that, of course, we the humanities are struggling to do. I don't want to be a humanities advocate here, but to think about the fact that we feel, that we hear, we see, we smell, we touch, and all these things. And then, how are we able then to have a continuous conversation with both the human self and the technology self? Technology and humanity then seem to be in a binary relationship where each one seems to be contesting the other's presence. But also we want to ask ourselves, is technology supposed to help us as humans to achieve our potential? When a chess game is played on the computer and the computer outwits us, where then do we place ourselves as human beings? When a robot can do the very things that we could ably do, where as human beings do we exist? But also much more than that, we want to ask ourselves. I watch stuff a lot, and there are now valves that are put in human beings to work as hearts. And my head thinks, okay, I think we're creating a different identity about ourselves. But then we also know that these things are supposed to enhance us as humans. They're supposed to make us better people. They're supposed to help us face the global challenges and the issues maybe of health and economy and the stock exchange and all these things that we want to think about ourselves. Now, we want to look at humans as evolving creatures. From the first industrial revolution, where there was water and steam power to help mechanization, to the second, where electric power was created to help us have mass production. And then the third industrial revolution, where ICT and electronics were used to automate production. And then what we are calling the fourth industrial revolution, which many people have also called the third industrial revolution reloaded. Do we see this fusion of technologies and the blurring lines between physical, digital, and biological aspects of life? I have had this argument on the Mwasa WhatsApp, and I'm trying to do research in what I am calling a unique Mwasa identity based on what I see on the WhatsApp pages. You know, we are WhatsApp and we're a group of Mwasa, and we sometimes imagine we know each other well. Yes, I share a group with Mark. I share a group with Dr. Nagas actually, with Professor Hinton. If you know Kiza Moti, I'm the one. I also sense that within this network of Mwasa, some of us are against certain things, some of us have now been called cabal, some of us have been thought of in very many interesting ways. And one of the things I want to ask myself is, okay, we have this technology that is before us, but how does this technology enhance our network as human beings? Do we forget the reality that we are made of flesh and blood? Or do we start seeing ourselves as people part of a great technological network? And this great technological network, how then do we see it probably help us in the future to work our lives out and so many other things that we want to think about? So while the fourth industrial revolution is seen as the third industrial revolution reloaded, we also know that there are consequences that come with it. How do we negotiate our positions as humans in the face of this technological advancement? Do we see ourselves as participants, or are we being pushed to the periphery as human beings? Are we actually fronting new technology to help us maybe understand ourselves more? In the humanities, we are always looked at as people with what I call conservative methodologies of research. So, as a literary person in folklore studies, ethnography is my thing. I go out to communities, I sit with communities, I listen to their stories, I think about these stories, I work on these stories, I analyze these stories. I am so terrible that I have failed, even as a humanities scholar, to use Atlas TI. Please don't pretend you had that. Just pretend you didn't hear that. But I failed to use Atlas TI because I want to look at my data and think about my data. I want to engage with this data. I want to engage with texts because I deal with text analysis. I want to think about what themes arise in these texts without having to let a machine think for me. And that doesn't mean that the machine cannot think for me. But I also want to give myself the chance to realize that I am part and parcel of what I am doing in my own research. But of course, we also know that if I got all my data and placed it into a system with Atlas TI, I can probably get the information I want, probably. But also maybe what I would miss out is this human element to what I have gathered through my ethnographic studies. And these are things that maybe we want to think about as we think about ethics later on. Do we see ourselves as being pushed to the periphery in this whole experience of artificial intelligence? Are we enhanced as human beings, or do we find ourselves in competition with what we have created? Now, I don't want to say that competition is bad. My studies are in competition performances. But I also want to say this, that while competition may help us to advance as human beings, competition comes with a bit of issues, and we're going to see those issues as we go on. And in thinking about this competition, then ethics become important in how we look at technological advancement and human advancement. I am not a biologist, so I do not know a lot about evolution. But I think as human beings, we're getting to a point where if we are not careful, we are going to lose meaning. If we are not, and please note I said if. I'm careful with the word if. So if we are not careful, we may lose meaning, but we may also lose ourselves and lose our sense of identity. And we want to think about this ethical thing. What is ethics then? What is ethics in thinking about how we look at things and how we figure out our lives? Now, anyone who has studied humanities knows that the branch of humanities that deals with ethics works within Plato's theories, rather. And I'm going to work with this and think about objects of AI, and think about objects placed in specific settings and how these objects determine the good and the bad. What are we doing? We are creating machines that are supposed to make decisions for us, which is a very beautiful thing. I love it when, like I said, I can go to the ATM and the ATM decides for me. I like my bank because it says how much do you want to withdraw, 50,000, 500,000, 1 million, any extra money. And that's a good thing because, you know, it's a matter of clicking, someone will get that money. But also, ethics deals with what is generally acceptable in society. We have probably heard of what a doctor recently did when he engineered a human baby, and the world was up in flames because of what he had done. And you know, the thing about it is that that is beautiful technological advancement, but is it acceptable in society? Now, the father of ethics is Plato. And Plato's argument, I'm going to now use a purely literary theory. Plato's argument about humanity is that literature, which he always has a problem with, is that literature is a bunch of lies. Real lies, yes. And this is the reason. He says, I teach this and sometimes it's so simple to me, I don't know why. His argument is that when you read a book, what you're doing is that you're reading someone's imagination. Now that imagination is not the truth because it is their imagination. And how you perceive this book is going to be based on how you determine how that imagination works for you. In essence, Plato's argument is that truth is only vested in God. And because only God tells the truth, everything that men or women or humans create is not true. I don't know that that is going to work for us here. We create machines, and these machines are supposed to think like we think. Plato's argument is going to be that if these machines think like we think, maybe these machines are a replica of us. But the moment you say they are a replica of us, then these machines are deceptive in nature. When we create the virtuous space for Plato, that virtuous space is not true because that virtuous space is also your imagination. And so when you go explain it to someone, you're still not telling that person the truth. Because this person is going to perceive what your imagination was like, but they are not going to experience that imagination. And that of course complicates work for us in literary studies, because then we go to class and tell our students that literature is a bunch of lies, and Plato says, get all these literature people, get all these writers, put them on a boat, set them on an island, let them die there. Why? Because they are not telling us the truth. The question then is, what is the truth? And you see, that is another problematic thing, because in my world, truth and facts are two different things. When I go to do research, because I'm a qualitative researcher, I go to find out people's views about what I'm studying. So what I'm going to do, like currently I'm working on a project on translating folklore into digital technologies. And one of the questions that come for me as a researcher is, these digital technologies, do they really represent the very folklore society that I have done my research in? This is the other thing. When we create a robot, when we create a machine, when we create a heart valve, when we create an ATM, when we create anything that is supposed to make choices, and please notice, make choices for us, okay? These choices are either acceptable or not acceptable. Now, when we create all these things, the very first question that is going to come up is, are they the truth? So when we, as human beings, ask ourselves about whatever we are seeing, is it the truth? Plato's argument is actually that Everything that is written is 3 stages from the reality. The writer describes the bed to us, we simply see the description of the writer. We don't actually see what the carpenter made, and we don't see what God initially thought of as a bed. In essence, everything we want to ask ourselves about artificial intelligence is, are we saying the truth, and are we saying reality? The fact is that there is an object that we are saying there. It's a machine, it's making decisions for us. The question then that is going to come up is, are the decisions being made by us? Or the decisions, are they being made by the machine? That is very important for us to think about. Can we determine how these machines can then make decisions that are health-worthy or worthwhile for us as human beings? What we create must have the ability to change the world for the better. And what makes us human is the fact that we can decide between what is right and what is wrong. Now, I know that's a moralistic thing. But the reality about life is that every one of us gets to that point where they have to decide whether this is good or bad. And sometimes we choose the bad as good, bad, and that is fine. But we have to get to that point. Now, truth is a determining factor in this decision making. Deception always forces us to make the wrong choices. And you know, deception is there's something we call liminal space in literary studies and post-colonial studies. You have this in-betweenness. How do we decide the truth, and how do we decide the deception that comes up in things? And sometimes if we are not careful, deception can make us imagine then that these machines are doing what we want them to do. But we also know that even if these machines are doing the things we want them to do, the machines must always be updated. This updating means that we are continually in a conscious process of thinking about ourselves and how we relate with these machines, and also give these machines a human aspect that we'd like them to have. So all craftsmanship, according to Plato, should instruct us to better borrow understanding of ourselves as humans. Now, what does this mean for artificial intelligence? Because AI creates objects that represent humanity in various ways. It is very important for us to determine how we see the world and compete with, and especially how this world that is created by AI competes with our natural surrounding and our natural self. You know, for someone like me, when I'm going to say this, it's quite feminine, but I'll say it. I have my friends a lot. My friends in this room, I have my friends. I don't believe, I have this thing, I don't believe in texts with all my heart. I want to hear someone's voice. I want to be sure that there's someone on the other end. Okay? And then I have a Twitter account where you tag someone and someone responds to you. You never met them, you're not even sure they exist. You know about machines, you throw something somewhere on a platform and then you have this response. Sometimes you realize that it's a generally mechanized nature and way of responding to things. But then there's always the problem in you starting to ask yourself, does this person really exist? And there's when we simulate reality and we simulate our human intelligence, there seems to be fluidity regarding truth and deception. There's this failure to understand. I talked about the bloodlines between truth and deception. And I hope we know, now this is a purely funny thing, I hope we know that truth is constructed. I hope we know that. Truth is constructed. We said this is a microphone, but actually it's a microphone because we said it's a microphone. It can be anything else if we want to. That is going into another theory. But truth is constructed. This could as well be a blue shirt, depending on who is looking at it. This could be a small hole, depending on who is looking at it. We can have an empty glass, which is half empty, or we can have a full glass, which is half full. It's all truth, depending on how we construct it. And what we are doing as human beings is that we want to ask ourselves, how do we perceive, how do we draw the line in this porous environment? When we create machines that make us believe that they are intelligent as we are, where do we draw the line regarding truth and reality? That is very, very important. And where do we remain actors, real actors, in real space, in real time, even in this highly technological world? As human beings, how are we able to ask ourselves this little question? I have created this, I am part of this, and I must maintain my identity in this thing. That is very important. But also, how far as human beings can we give our personality to the technology that we create? Because is this the technology we've created, or is it us that are speaking? In literature, we always have the argument that when someone writes a text, they create characters. And when they create characters, there's always been this argument when we're teaching, especially poetry, where we tell students there's a difference between a speaker and a poet. And the students go up in flames and tell us, no, it is the poet that is speaking in the poem. And we say, no, it is actually a speaker in the poem that is speaking. And so we always tell the students, the speaker creates the poet. And we confuse them. And my argument has always been that while the speaker is created by the poet, the truth is that the poet is speaking through the speaker. So even when it comes to artificial intelligence, are we the ones speaking, or is it the machine speaking? Do we give it an identity that is true to itself? Or are we able to ask ourselves about this identity and maybe ask ourselves about the evolving identities that we are able to create in machines and so many other things that we are creating as human beings? Now, 3 things about human beings. We feel, we use our hands, we use our brain. Those are 3 things about human beings. We are psychomotor in nature, we can use our hands. We have feelings, we are affective in nature, we are cognitive in nature. When I am told something, I listen, I think about that thing. When I want to do something, if I want to clean my house, I'll get my hands dirty, I'll clean my house. And then there is a feeling that sometimes I hate people. No, I didn't say that. Sometimes I like people, sometimes I don't like people. There's this element about our humanity that goes into how we have been created. And actually, one of the things I was taught when studying to be a teacher was that I must be able to help my students develop those 3 aspects of a student. That when I teach my student, I must help them to understand, I must help them to feel, I must help them to do something, I must be able to skill them. Now the question is, are we able to lend these 3 aspects of our human self to technology? And if we cannot, then we have a lot of things that we want to ask ourselves. When I go to a machine, how do I respond to that machine? I'm going to give you a very weird example. People who have grown up watching TV, it has been said, fail to communicate with people because they are dealing with a machine in front of them, it's giving them a lot of information, and they have no one to talk back to. There's research that says that. But I also know, as a practitioner in communication studies, that a TV is something that is big. You have all these images that are running very speedily. And all these images that are running force my mind then to run fast. And maybe I become a machine in my own right. You see that? So the question then is, does this machine have the ability to speak to me? Do I have the ability to speak back to it? And every machine that we create, we have to ask ourselves, are we able to relay our very personality into these machines? And I want us to think about a text like Handmaid's Tale, where women are put so down that they must never express themselves. The main character in the book, what she does is, because she's a woman and she's a handmaid, when it is time to get a child, this is going to be a gross description of the text. When it is time for her ovulation, she must sleep with her boss in order to give birth to a child, which child is not going to be hers. And what that does is that she's kind of dehumanized as a person. But then the other trouble with it is that because there is a system that has made her the kind of person that she is, she refuses to bow down to the pressure of machine life. And what she actually does is that she says, I will get my child, but this child will not belong to this family. I will get my child, but I will make sure this child gets a point where she can get to freedom. And there is always this continuous sense in us as human beings to return to the very basic nature of ourselves. That is something that we want to think about. So every actor in technology is a creation of a human being. Rather creator, that should have been creator. Do we see the world as a technological invention or as part of a reality and vision of what the future looks like? I work in a world where I have to I have a world where we create. I teach a book. I hate doing this, but I teach animal farm, and I always tell my students, you see that blue building? My department is next to the main building, and I tell my students, you see that blue building? There's some pigs that sit in there, and please don't tell them I said that. Yeah, I tell them there's some pigs that sit in there, and the students always tell me I've insulted my bosses, and I say, no. I want us to think about the pigs here, and then I want us to think about the pigs there. And so we have these debates and arguments in class, and of course, the students, I think we are teaching a terrible generation of people that are so much aware of not just their rights, but also what is wrong, and what they don't want to accept. And so I have worked on making these students think about the environment, think about so many things around them, and work within these things to also remind them about their humanity. That is very important, because that is what literature is really, really about. So, as we create these human beings, as we create these intelligent human beings, do we see our world totally free of us? Or do we see our world as working in tandem with these things? That is a very ethical question that you want to think about. And what is next for us in the ethical challenge? Humanities see themselves as evolving, but probably at a speed sometimes not as fast as technological advancement. And like I said, I still deal with very conventional methods of research. Humans are intelligent machines, but as these are reinvented, we want to think carefully about this reinvention. Are we inventing a new self? Are we inventing a better self? Or are we inventing our vision of ourselves? You see that? Are we inventing our vision of ourselves? And as we invent that vision of ourselves, what exactly are we creating? Are we creating something that is going to make us totally obsolete? Or are we creating something that is going to help us be better citizens? I know about evolution, I know about competition, I know about all these things. But are we aware that all these questions need to come to mind as we think about it? The good and the bad, the right and the wrong makes for humans to decide how to build networks. But our mind is creative, and because our mind is creative, there's always the desire to create something that is just like us. You see, I've told my students many times that if you can follow the writer's way of writing, you'll be very shocked that if you very carefully analyze it, you're going to see that writer in that text. There is always something that follows them. And there is always the desire in us to create something that is like we are. But the question is, how far can we go in recreating, reconstructing, and reinventing who we are? With the fourth industrial revolution, of course, our identities are on the move as we negotiate who we are in the force of our clones. And I want to say clones because machines then turn out to be like we are. But how this makes us better people is something that we must carefully think about. Humanity is beyond the flesh. AI may be machines, but are we willing to rethink our perception of who we are? Are we willing to say machines are more intelligent than we are? I don't know if any of you have asked yourselves that question. Are you willing to say that ATM is more intelligent than you are? Are you willing to say that heart valve can move your heart better than your God-given heart? And I know I'm working with engineers, so I'll say God with God, yes. There's continuous need for this conversation because we in the humanities believe that humanities give life its essence. The sciences explain a lot about life, and creatively these can think about how they can learn from each other. Are we, as scientists here in this room, are we willing to learn from the human self and develop the idea that these networks that we create as human beings make for us what is actually a better world, but also help us to understand that we are important actors even in the space of the things that we create. Survival is important for humanity, and this is the truth. But that also means that our contact as humans is what makes us a special breed of creation. Now, when we hand our choices over to the humans, rather to the machines, are we willing to accept the choices that they make? Are we willing to accept that sometimes these choices will be wrong? But most of all, are we willing to understand that sometimes the choices may go against what we, their creators, thought about? I've had this argument, probably Betty should know it, how we've taught students things in literature And then you meet the writers of the books and they tell you, that was the last thing on my mind when I was writing that book. And it is a very funny thing, because I remember when I was teaching, there's a text by Wale Shoyinka, which is entitled, which is this one with CD, The Lion and the Jewel. And we have all these things about the crudities of rustic life and all these things. We're thinking about this man who has been educated and so many other things, and how Shoyinka is ranting against education. And then Shoyinka, at one point, I was reading an interview, said, I was never at any one point thinking about that. But you see, when we get machines, we want the whole world to take them as thinking what we think. The trouble is that knowledge is constructed within specific spaces. And it is very important for us to understand that these spaces differ. I am a post-colonial critic, and I look at society and life as a post-colonial community. But I know people who read what I read, and they look at it within the world of postmodernism, which is a very terrible thing for some of us. I know when I read certain things from what I read, and I've had people read the very same things that I do, and they're telling me, but Isaac, that's not how this text should be interpreted. And that is very normal, and that is very common. The question always is, when we create whatever we create, are we helping the survival of the human race? Are we helping the survival of who we are and our identity as a unique, intelligent personality? Or are we lending our intelligence and personality to others to determine many things for us? Is there, in essence, as we create all these machines, a threat to our future? Or, if that future exists, are we able to be actors and participants within that future? How far can we go in protecting this humanness that we share as human beings? And if technology helps us to explore the possibilities of sharing that humanness, are we willing to participate in connection with each other? Because that is our ethical dilemma. Our dilemma is that we need to ask ourselves, are we relevant as human beings as we continually create more relevant machines, as we continually create more relevant intelligent beings? Because the more we ask ourselves these questions, the more we are probably going to rethink how we create AI, how we probably think about it, but also what kind of things we are creating out of our creative self. Thanks for listening.